Hi, everybody. Welcome to another On Tilt episode. The film you just watched was of me, of my living funeral. It was epic. We had a little bit of sound problems, but we're going to capture a little bit more of that later. But I wanted to welcome you all here. Julius could not join us today, and let's keep him in our thoughts and prayers. He had a family emergency, but you guys got Mama Brown, and I'm here. And as we always start the show, we always express our gratitude. We always say thank you for joining us. And we always like to start the show with a moment of silence. So if we could please just go black screen and have a moment of silence for our loved ones, for those that we lost during this crazy COVID pandemic, for those that we remember always, our ancestors. Let's just have a moment of silence for just the state of mental health here in America, that is very problematic and traumatic. So let's just have a moment of silence for that. Thank you, guys. Welcome back. Welcome back. Um, so much has been going on in the media lately. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. Um, I was in sunny Florida, so I know I had a great Thanksgiving outside with my mask on all the time because Florida is one of those popular, high number red COVID. Well, they said all of America right now, but you know what I mean. COVID is running rampant in Florida. And let me tell you, they were not really, some people wore masks, but the majority of, I mean, a lot of people did not wear their mask. And it was a bit scary because I'm like, you guys out here bold. You all out here as if COVID don't exist. I was on the beach with my mask on. Wherever I went, I had my mask except when I was filming and I kind of got away from everyone. I was kind of isolated to myself, but I was not messing around. Mama Brown took her test before she went, and she will take her test actually today after the show. But again, wear your mask. It's serious out here. Stay home or go to warm, sunny Florida like I did and be outside social distancing. But be careful on the plane. Anyway, today, guys, we have look weird me doing this by myself. I miss Julius. Um, but we have a very, very special guest. The video that we opened the show up was produced by this young lady. She incredible. And I am when I saw it, I cried. I was so humbled. I didn't even know she had captured the living funeral the way she did. And like who has a living funeral? I look, something when something happened to me, I have already celebrated myself. Today is 152 of my hunger strike. 152. I am the most disrespected Black mother in America. I know. When someone said that to me, I couldn't believe it. But the reality is, I've surpassed everyone else on a hunger strike. And sometimes I do wonder if I was white, would America open their ears and heart to my why? And my why is all over social media on all platforms. And as you can see, My why was captured so beautiful in the film you just seen. I wish you could have heard it. Maybe we can play a little bit towards the end where you can actually hear some of the sound. But it's on YouTube too, and we will post where you can actually access that video later on in the show. But right now, I want to introduce to you the phenomenal young lady. Her name is Gabrielle Gray, and she is all of that in a bag of chips. She is the president of the Extra Concerned Citizens Group of Pittsburgh, Homewood. I always say Homewood. I always mess that up. Homewood Neighborhood Chapter. Y'all know I'm new to Pittsburgh, so you kind of got to give me you know, a little what do you call it? A escape card when I mess up like that, or apology card or whatever. Hi, Gabriel.
Hi, everybody. How you doing, Mama Brown? Thank you so much for having me on the show, first of all. Thank you.
No, thank you so much for willing to come on the show. Um, you're a you look. I'm gonna have to use Nikki Joe word. You're a blacktivist. You know that sounds like Nikki Joe. When she told me that word, I was like, got it. But
Right.
you're a blacktivist, and you and I have met several times,
Yes.
and
Yes.
you have came and support a lot of my actions.
Yes.
And we have met in other actions as well. Tasha Tylee's actions for her son. You've been very visual in those actions as well. So I just wanted to say thank you and welcome. And you know, one of the things I want to make sure I do, and I want to apologize if I didn't. What are your pronouns?
Oh, thank you for asking. It is she, her, um, we, us.
Okay. Well, good, because I said to myself, I did not ask that beforehand, and I was afraid that by me saying she and her, I was like, "Are you sure, Danny?" And I was like, "Well, I'm gonna have to apologize if I got it wrong." But woo,
No, that's
okay,
okay. That's okay. And it's beautiful. We live in a very fluid society,
yeah.
and gender is one of those spaces that I feel like as a society we're exploring. And I feel like it's a beautiful time. If you are going to explore your gender, do it now.
Hey, you know, it's. I have a son, and my son is gay. And I am so grateful for him being so colorful and for him showing me just how to be an appropriate mom to him. You know, sometimes I mess up, and or I may say something that might not be all that culture accepted. I don't know. That's very rare. But I had to learn about pronouns. And that was a huge, change for me. He goes by he, but the fact that when I came to Pittsburgh, I didn't know anything about it. And I had to go back to my son and say, you know what? I never even asked you what your pronouns are, you know? And he was like, wow, mom. I was like, yeah, I'm hip. But
Yes. Yes.
tell me about you. Tell on tilt in our audience and those that follow us in our show about yourself.
Right. Well, I thank you again for allowing me space on your show. And I'm from Homewood, born and raised, 37-year resident. I live in my ancestral home. This is my great grandparents' home.
Wow.
And I'm blessed to be able to continue to build generational wealth with it. And I taught music at the Afro-American Music Institute for 11 years. Well, 2003 was the beginning of my professional artistic career. And I was a music instructor, and I moved into some space where I started doing production work on television and film sets, and I transferred my music skills into that space of video, and then moved into doing videography, and that's just kind of me creatively. And then in the background of all of that, I've coined myself as, as you said, I'm a Blacktivist, and I'm happy to, use that term as well. Nikki Jo is a very good friend of mine. We work together. She's great people. She's brilliant. And if she would, allow me to call myself a Blacktivist, I would be very honored. So I'm happy to call myself a Blacktivist. However, up until today, when I call myself a Blacktivist, I've always called myself an arts advocate. And I've always brought attention to the space of economic change by utilizing arts as that economic driver. I also do have a background in economics. I have organized the Alumni Band Association, the Westinghouse Alumni Band Association. That's my alma mater. They systematically dismantled the music department as well as the arts department at Westinghouse. And so we all, as alumni, came together and we got arts put back into the budget. And now we have moved into a space where it started off as a substitute teacher position, and then it went to part-time band director position. And now it is a full-time band director position that is in the budget at Westinghouse. And so we're happy that we were able to reestablish a beautiful, flourishing network of Westinghouse alumni, not just the Alumni Band Association, but now the Alumni Association has strengthened as well through our organizing. And we've really been able to make a lot of changes and adjustments at Westinghouse. And that's starting with building healthy, dynamic relationships amongst ourselves in the AA community. So that was a really big win for us. And then moving into some space where I have organized Homewood residents into the Extra Concerned Citizens Group of Pittsburgh, and we are the Homewood Neighborhood Chapter. And here recently, we have just started our Code of Conduct and Employee Training program that we are implementing at the Homewood Quick Stop. And that is the store that was boycotted because a gun was pulled out on a young girl who was accused of stealing. And we don't ever want to see that happen again. And so Amber Sloan led that. She spearheaded the fight. And then we came in behind and organized those pieces into an actual program that we're going to have implemented throughout all of the businesses in Homewood who wish to participate, the current businesses as well as future businesses, because Homewood is going through a gentrification process that is going to bring in a whole lot of diversity, right? And so we're happy. We want great investment in Homewood. We want change in Homewood. However, as the residents that are already currently here in Homewood, we also want to have a stake in that gentrification process. And so this is a really good way for residents to be able to pour into their own community and invest. And, moving into some space, we want to start a community fund, and we want to start some other things, looking at even turning a portion of Homewood into a cultural district, so that, because we have a lot of cultural history here. I'm the entertainment coordinator for Harambe, which is, it's coined, we call it Harambe here in Homewood, but it's actually the Harambe Ujima Black Arts Festival. And it's our nation's oldest Black Arts Festival, but no one knows. So we want to be able to start to use our cultural legacy in Homewood as leverage for this gentrification process, so that we can have our own seats at the table, and we can preserve our culture and preserve our heritage, because the impact of identity is vital, not just for now, but more importantly for the next generation. We don't want to continue to be far removed from who we are as African Americans with great lineage out of the motherland. So that's just a little bit about me and the work that I do.
Ooh, I mean, how do you take time to take care of yourself? Because you do a lot, Gabriel. I mean, if your hands is not on a dynamite film footage like you did for me, and thank you again for that. That was amazing. And I wish we had the sound to it. We will in a little while. but it was amazing. And you are gifted and you are talented. And I just had to say thank you again. So, tell me a little bit about what of all the projects you're working on right now, which one really hits home for you and that you bury a lot of your passion into?
That's a really great question. I never even thought to ask myself that. The one most important one definitely would be the Westinghouse Alumni Band Association. That's, very near and dear to me because that's my alma mater. And I want to make sure that we leave our legacy for the next generation of student learners in the arts in Homewood. And then the next one would definitely be, we're working right now on the Harambe Black Arts Festival documentary, so that we can preserve the history and celebrate 53 years of Black arts excellence right here in Homewood. So those would definitely be the most two important projects to me right now.
Wow. Wow. Now, I showed up at you mentioned earlier about the young girl, the gun where the store owner pulled the gun on a young girl. I was
Yes.
there at that store. Matter of fact, Cortez, George
Yes.
Floyd's nephews were there. We all showed up there. And when I tell you, you guys, boy, you had that store owner coming out with Gatorade and potato chips and, and trying to be friendly as they can be. But the beautiful thing, and I'm happy you mentioned Amber Salome, because Amber put in a lot of hours letting them understand that this is not acceptable in this community, and you will not get away. There is repercussions to pulling out a gun on
Yes.
our children,
Yes.
our unarmed children.
Yes. Yes.
And it's
Yes.
unacceptable. And when you do that, you're going to have to deal with the cavalry.
Yes.
And when I
Yes.
tell you the cavalry came, the
Yes.
cavalry came. I mean, you got the press of George Floyd. I mean, I would be scared. Let these communities be put on notice. You
Yes.
cannot do that to us and think we're just sitting and quiet about it.
Yes.
No, you guys showed up for her. You guys showed up for me. You guys show up a lot of times, period, for each other. And that needs to be said because I don't think people understand. You don't just deal with one, you deal with a collective group. And when these collective groups come together, all hell will break loose and we
Yes.
will demand change. So,
Yes.
and that leads me to talk about something else. Let's talk about defunding the police. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I don't agree with policing, period. So I think, it's more so for me, the abolishment of policing is something that needs to be explored, not necessarily defunding the police, because you're just taking those dollars, right?
Mhm.
And you're putting them in another place of policing, but you're calling it social work, or you're calling it something remixed, like group violence intervention, or something else that is not necessary. What's necessary is community and love, self-love, community love, familial love, which is, you know, um, like I said, I don't know if I had mentioned, we had brought up the code of ethics and employee training program. I'm not sure if I brought that up on the show or in
Yeah.
previous when we were talking. And, so that we can actually govern ourselves. It's not necessarily about policing ourselves, it's about governing ourselves. So when you move money around, you're just simply moving money around to different hands that are involved in perpetuating the policing. And I'm not into that. I'm into change. I'm into, systemic, impactful, dynamic adjustments that will course correct our society permanently, not temporarily. So, that's just me, real quickly. at the tip of the iceberg of it, how I feel about defund the police. I'm not into it. You're just rotating money, from this corruption to that corruption. It's just budgetarily, it's a different line item. It's in a different budget. So, and then, like I said, and then just take it back some more. I'm not into policing. I'm not into the fact that a portion of it, right here, I pulled up the history of policing. I don't know if everybody can see that, but
we got a light. It's an iPad, so it's a light on your back screen. But tell us a little bit about it. What you pulled up. Just
so it's right here. In the southern states. I'll just read this report right here. This is called The History of Policing in the United States, written by Dr. Gary Potter. And just real quickly, it says, more than crime, modern police forces in the United States emerged as a response to disorder. That wasn't the disorder of any criminal activity. That was a disorder of racial segregation. They didn't want that disrupted. And so it says here, in the southern states, the development of American policing followed a different path. The genesis of the modern police organization in the South is the slave patrol. And the first formal slave patrol was created in the Carolina colonies in 1704. Slave patrols had three primary functions. One, to chase down, apprehend, and return to their owners runaway slaves. Two, to provide a form of organized terror to deter slave revolts. And three, to maintain a form of discipline for slave workers who were subject to summary justice outside of the law if they violated any plantation rules. So on top of rules being de jure segregation, right?
Right.
So on top of segregation being legal, now you're going to have these jokers called police to carry out those three functions. So policing itself is not okay. It is violent. Policing itself is perpetuating cycles of violence. So we have to examine the whole thing and not reform it. We have to examine it, really look at it for educational purposes, because we can't impart this knowledge to the next generation. We are not going to be able to raise our children up in a space of freedom if we're constantly teaching our Black boys and our Black girls, okay, when the police come, put your hands on the wheel and look straight ahead. Well, we were teaching them the wrong rules. But this is not a rule.
This is how we started teaching that in our generation. Mm-hmm. I had to start teaching that to my sons in my generation. How crazy is that? I wasn't even... The fact that this system is getting worse, because even growing up, it was engraved in us to be afraid of the police, right?
Sure.
It was ingrained in us.
Sure.
But not only that, now in my generation, I have to teach. We're teaching the next generation how to be dehumanized. By saying you're a special population because you're Black. So this is how you have to now, conduct yourself.
Sure.
When you come in contact with a paid citizen doing this work out of our tax dollars.
Sure.
So we're taking our money. I like how you talked about remix. I mean, to me, that was the best. I mean, you're an economist, but I love that word. We're really just remixing the pot, and we're putting titles, and we're not dealing with the system.
Right. Sure.
And we're now indoctrinating fear. Sure. We're part of it as parents now, because we're raising these kids now and telling them, you must fear the police if you want to survive.
Right. Sure.
You know how horrible that is? As a mother who lost her child at the hands of 3 law enforcement. I don't care if one of them was a security guard. They still law enforcement titles.
Yes.
That even though I told my children that, and it was horrible that I had to tell my children that that my son was a victim of it. Why do we? That's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
And what makes it worse is it is planned. It's systemic. It's in law. They thought this out, And when I say they, I mean our founding members of the country, right? The ones who first moved the pen, right? So that's what it says. It says if they were to carry out 3 things, and one of them is the number 2 thing, to provide a form of organized terror to deter slave revolts.
Was it organized terror that my son went out that window?
Exactly. And I would say, unfortunately, a portion of that terror, in particular in cities like Pittsburgh, is so covert because they utilize the media, they utilize the judicial system, they utilize the police, the public safety system, including EMS, including fire response. They utilize all of it. It's so sad. We have a term called blue flu because during gentrification processes, what they'll do in neighborhoods like Homewood, they will have the blue flu implemented. And it's when you call the police and you say a crime is happening and they take their time getting to you. They'll circle around until it elevates and escalates into something that now is worth approaching, because in the report, we can now say that this was a violent crime, and that continues to brand neighborhoods like Homewood as violent.
Wow.
Unfortunately.
And guess what? Not just Homewood. This is happening in communities everywhere where there is a percentage of African American tenants. Everywhere. I bet you if it was a Homewood, you come to my neighborhood in Washington, D.C. The gentrification is happening here. Go-go. You ever heard of go-go music?
Absolutely. That's a DC thing. I love it.
Okay. Shout out to Michelle Blackwell. That's my girl. But so I graduated from Howard University.
All right. Bisons. All right.
So maybe about a block or 2 down, they were playing go-go music at this store. They sell, a lot of go-go tapes, and this store is known to be a hub for go-go music, and they'll play it on a loudspeaker. Well, they built these apartment buildings across the street from the store. So out of that came complaints from Caucasian who moved in a predominantly Black neighborhood. Then it came them petitioning for noise ordinance. And then it became now shut down our culture, shut down what we have always been known for, because we're inconvenience our new tenants that just came through gentrification. And like, you know what? No longer do your culture and what you stand for and what best represents this city is appropriate.
Sure.
And how is it that they can get these things, these laws and these things move so quickly when we can't even petition to have a certain percentage of the apartments for low income or designated, to keep it where African Americans can have access and affordability in the city. But they can come and enact these laws to kind of, just again, that control. So basically I say that to say that, they come in, they take over. At Howard University, they use our grounds to walk their dogs and to have their dog shit all over the place.
Wow.
And this is sacred ground. Sacred ground. But absolutely. They got the whole system at their disposal.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
The whole system.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And we have to fight tooth and nail for everything just to protect our own culture.
Absolutely.
In an occupied space we've been at from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want the city because of the rats.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They called us rats and put us in the city.
Mm-hmm.
Now you go to New York, you go to Washington, D.C., you go to all these places, major cities. And what do they want now? Now they want us out again. Kick us back to the field and take over the city.
Right. Right. And that goes to why I don't agree with policing, because the cycles of violence that are perpetuated are not systemic of the people. No. It's systemic of the systems, right? The people are just batteries, right? That are plugged into this thing called a calendar, right? And that's not even real. It's the Gregorian calendar. Like, they made that 7-day-a-week thing up for the industrial era. You know, so when you look at how come we move the way we move, you actually have to appreciate history. But unfortunately, because our history has been stolen from us, when I say us, I mean African Americans, we have no interest in history, right? You can't protect what you don't know is important. So if our history has been removed from us and degraded, and it's actually turned into something that we wish to run away from instead of running towards, then they got us. Because we'll end up running around like chickens with our heads cut off in search of something when we didn't have to search forward. All we had to do was take a look back. And the answers were right there. But it's very hard to make that connection when psychologically we've been so destroyed through post-traumatic slave syndrome. And that's Dr. Joy. That's her book. That's her coined term. And it's an excellent book. Post-traumatic slave syndrome. I recommend everyone read it and make it a part of their library. Mm-hmm. Yes, post-traumatic slave syndrome. Because once you understand where you're from, and that's why the impact of identity is also important. And that's another great book as well. Where if you understand where you're from, then it's very hard for anybody to fill your head with anything else but the truth. That's the only thing you'll be able to digest and receive is the truth, because you understand who you are. You understand where you're from, and thusly, because you understand who you are, you understand where you're going. And no one can shake that. However, because we've been removed from ourselves through all kinds of trauma, I mean, from the burning of libraries, from the burning of entire cities and neighborhoods, from the bombing. I mean, it's the list is long. We know the tragedies, right? We are still living through a tragedy called COVID-19, which has completely destroyed the African American market. Okay, so which was actually, believe it or not, projected to be one of the strongest markets, was the African American market. Was projected in 2020 to be at its strongest. But then COVID-19 hit. And now the Wall Street Journal said COVID-19 obliterated it.
Wow.
They didn't say destroy it. Wall Street Journal said obliterated the African American market. Right. So that means that there has been some systemic dismantling in some spaces that are not resilient. Mm-hmm. But how are we going to be able to build our resiliency if we don't understand how we keep getting systemically destroyed and dismantled? We have to look back at the Black Panther Party and understand the systemic dismantle. We have to look back at Black Wall Street and understand the systemic dismantle, so that we don't move forward taking stabs in the dark, yet we move forward educated and in spaces that are of very profound and impactful changes. You know, and so that's what we have a lot going on here in Pittsburgh, our corruption that has been institutionalized by practicing it generation after generation after generation, until one day it became what's called de facto, right? It's something that's widely believed, but it has never been true. It's never been a law. It's not even been a rule. This has just been a way of being that people have practiced because my mama did it. My grandma did it. My granddaddy was this. I go to church and pray every day because this was told to me. I do this. I have kids and get married and have the dog and the American dream. And, you know, exactly. But it's all to keep you distracted from what you're really supposed to do. We're not even on the right clock. Our internal clocks are off. So we have to literally, it's a purging. That's why 2020 to me has been so beautiful for me in particular. You had mentioned in the beginning, self-care. If you want to talk about policing, let's talk about self-care.
Come on.
If you really, you're not going to be able to police or govern yourself accordingly, because thought governs action, right? If you're not taking care of yourself. You know, I was just on the phone before I got on the show, and I was talking about self-care because I had kind of disappeared for a little bit. People are actually looking for me because I actually am loved, but I had gotten into some headspace where I did not feel.
Right here, y'all. Okay, she right here. This is where you can find her, right here on TiLT.
Isn't that crazy? That's so crazy. Hi, Ramona.
Right.
She's somebody looking for me.
Mama Brown is in DC, and she done found Gabriel Gray. Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Lakeisha. I had my investigators out there.
Yes, Auntie Carol, thank you, because that's who I was on the phone with. I was on the phone with Aunt Carol, and we were talking, and it was really about to do with self-care, because she told me, she said, don't disappear like that. I love you. Wow. And I have to be reminded, because I just came from an action day before yesterday because of a Black mother who has been evicted in Wilkinsburg in the middle of winter, the day before Thanksgiving, because her special needs son was making too much noise, and she lives in an all-white apartment building, and the neighbors, who are all white, reported noise violations. And don't you know, because she had the police called on her, she is now evicted, because that's the term of agreement in the lease in the CP development, also known as Regent Square Rentals lease agreement. If you get the police called on you, then you got to go. But that's a part of that systemic racism. Who says that? You know what that means when you say, if you get the police called on me. So you're not doing a racial assignment, you're doing a designation now. Mm-hmm. These are the categories of people who get popo called on them. They are Black. Yes. So let's go on ahead and put that in the lease. And instead of saying, if you're Black, you'll get evicted at any given notice. No, we'll just say, if you get the police called on you, then you could get evicted. You see what I mean? So I just came from an action where all of that manipulation is at play, and it really wore me down. And so I disappeared. I went under for a little bit, right? And then Aunt Carol.
You checked out for a little bit. You checked out.
I did. And I have to do better with communicating my checkout, because I forget what I mean to others. You know, sometimes I get very self-consumed and self-absorbed, and I'm in the hurt. You know, right. I'm in the defensive hurt space. I'm in my turtle shell, right? Yeah. So I forget, though, that I mean something to other people, not necessarily that others love me. That's beautiful as well, that people wish to pour love into me, right? Right. However, I also have cycles of love that I have extended and I have going. You know, I also have extended cords of love to others that if I cut them, that's detrimental to others. So I have to do better at communicating when I have to have my self-care time. And that also comes with maturity, you know, and it comes with swallowing my pride, because I think I can be everything to everybody all the time. And I hate saying no, you know, and I hate not being there. And I hate when I have to establish a moment in time where I have to say, no, I cannot do that. It's time for self-care. Right. But if I believe in self-governance, right, and self-determination, right, and all of these principles of what we call or Harambe, right, where you have collective self-help, then it starts with self. So if we're going to look at policing, then we have to start looking at self and restoration programs, restorative programs that bring people back to themselves, not necessarily mental health disparity type problems and those kind of mental health narratives that are out there right now.
Yeah, we gotta
That's
be
a
careful
start.
with that too.
Right. We definitely, but it's like it's its own space, because that is actually the residual effects, the schizophrenia, the bipolar. For me, I have been diagnosed by the white psychology world as borderline, as well as it's not OCD, it's OCPD. So it's an alpha mental disorder, where I don't really care about the ritual of doing things. I just care that you do it perfectly. So I'm very hard on myself because I want things to be done perfectly. And so I look at that, and I was very thankful to the white psychology world. That's cool. It gave me a fresh perspective on me to move forward. However, the stuff that they have labeled in that world of psychology, that's not the root issue. That's a systemic issue. That's a result of issue. The schizophrenia and the bipolar and all these other, 52 million terms that they have as diagnoses. Like I said, not to debunk it, not to debunk the science and the studies behind it. However, really, when it comes down to it, we're dealing with a group of sick people that have dealt with, and I'll say it again, it's post-traumatic slave syndrome. When you look at things like sexual abuses that happen in the home, when you look at poverty cycles, when you look at self-worth, that is all systemic of the trauma of slavery.
Yeah.
And we have to have a society that is willing to own up to that. And that includes our United States government. As well as the world.
Yes, I'm happy you mentioned the United States government.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you are aware about our beloved President Barack Obama. President Barack Obama, he made this comment. He said, if you believe, as I do, that we should be able to reform the criminal justice system so that it's not biased and treats everybody fairly, I guess you can use a snappy slogan like defund the police. But you lost a big audience the minute you say it, which makes it a lot less likely that you're actually going to get the change you want done. How do you feel about that? I got my own opinion. That came from the President Barack Obama.
Well, it's definitely very typical Obama response. He's a very good politician. We love him to death. That is the people's champ. And, for me, like I said, I agree with him to a certain extent, because it goes back to that whole thing of you can remix it and call it whatever it is you want. Right.
Right.
And his emphasis is on the name, the words that you use, lest you lose an audience of people that you may wish to include in this, right? Mm-hmm. So now he's using his little political scissors to start cutting language so that he doesn't get hemmed and hawed up as the leader.
Both sides of the fence.
Exactly. Right. He loves those scissors. He loves them. He liked being on both sides. That's the people's champ. What can you say?
I'm a little bit over here and I'm going to be a little bit over there, but you're not going to stick me in one place. I'm going to give
you right. Exactly. He doesn't want to be known as the leader of this initiative at all. He has his own thoughts about it. And I think when you speak like that, very forked-tongued, it's dangerous.
Yeah. I
think you should be very clear. He should be a lot more clear about the audience in particular, that group of people, and be a little bit more explicit about what he really feels should be done. You see what I mean? Like, you talking about these terms, that's dangerous civil rights moves in it of itself. I call them civil rights chess moves.
But then he goes on and tell us how we should say things, the position we should take. He says we should say, let's I'm sorry, let's reform the police department so that everybody's being treated fairly. You know, divert young people from getting into crime. And if there was a homeless guy, can maybe we send a mental health worker there instead of an armed unit that could end up resulting in tragedy? That seems to be a little bit double standard to me. First of all, will we ever be treated fairly? Back to what you said earlier.
Right.
That part.
Right.
Because I don't understand how we could reform a system that was broken from day one. Like you said, it was a slave mentality birth system to track us down, to control us, and to terrorize us to not wanting to leave and to conform
to
a racist system. So how do we not see the need to, because I'm gonna tell you, I started off with this whole reform. I want to reform. Let's reform how campus police. Duquesne did. No, and then I was taught by Pittsburgh, by Brandy Fishers, by I Can't Breathe, by you guys, by Nikki Joe. No, Danny. You don't want to defund. We want to dismantle, get rid of, tear it down. And I have to say, I cannot not say that well, she really don't like to go by a name, but we all know who she is, Gam.
Oh, yeah.
She's a big component to my understanding the difference as well between reform, defund, and dismantle. So it's interesting now that President Obama is out of the office, but we have President-elect Biden. So we can kind of get a understanding of what side of the fence President-elect Biden will be on. And that's scary. That's scary.
Yes, especially since Biden is the architect of the 1994 crime bill that created mass incarceration. I don't, want someone like that, that kind of pen moving when it comes to any kind of police reform,
right,
or any kind of reform of anything, public safety. There's no trust there at that point. That was my issue with Trump and Biden, which is why I said, well, we got to be more engaged in the primary.
Yeah.
I actually do lean towards the group that says, well, the election process isn't even for us anyway. We were slaves when all of this election process was written. And while I do agree with that, it's baby steps, right? So until we actually become super knowledgeable, like we are in the space of public safety, right? Like we had to become knowledgeable in the space of public safety because that's directly killing us.
Right.
So we had to get savvy and smart and sophisticated on that. And then, like I said, baby steps into the whole election process, because you got to look at the judges. You got to look at the DA. You got to look at attorneys. You got to look at the whole system. These people fund each other for elections.
Yes.
Yep. So they're all in each other's pocket. Right? You got attorneys. Right, exactly. Attorneys are funding the judges' elections. You got the developers who are funding city council and mayor's elections. Yeah. It's full of corruption. Listen, the cycles cannot be reformed. No. And these are cycles that were never made for us. But, moving back to what Obama said, about, I don't remember if you could reread that second half. I remember him saying something about social workers. See, I've heard two sides of that coin as well, where social workers do not want to be police officers. They want to be social workers.
Absolutely.
They don't feel safe.
So, right. So here we are now, and this is happening in Pittsburgh right now, in Allegheny County, because they got a whole board centered around this, where they want to immediately start sending out these social workers to address, mental health crisis in the communities, but where is the tools? Like, you guys are just throwing stuff in place. Where's the training? Where's the foundation work? How about we start with something as simple as when you call 911, that you have it goes, if it's a crisis, it goes to that crisis unit that's not even connected to the police.
Right.
And the police don't even have to get involved at all.
Right.
So, I mean, but you're just saying, what, a ride along? Send out a social worker with a police officer, and what? You hide behind your weapon, and that social worker is just like what?
Exactly.
Out there?
Exactly. That's how I feel about it, but that's a lot of what I was saying. Exactly.
They don't get the 20-year retirement benefits.
That part, right? We haven't even looked at the pay and the benefits.
Your sound.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Oh.
Can you hear me now? Testing. Okay, I'm not able to hear you. I can't hear you now. No. Hello? Testing. Uh-oh. Oh.
There we go. What about now?
Perfect. We back on.
We're back. God is towards the end of the show.
Right. Exactly. This went by so quickly, and we could talk about so much more. But just to go back to the social workers, I'm not a social worker. However, what I'm saying is I've heard other social workers just not feel comfortable just yet the way things are. But like you said, there's this rush all the time to get things done. But that's that money. They trying to get this money to do this because of the deadline. See, the funding cycles are actually perpetuating violence with, say, for example, the Federal Reserve and this COVID money, right? They got to get rid of this money before the end of the year, or else it's going back to the Federal Reserve, right? So they're spending it any kind of way with no structure in place, because Black people in particular, I'll speak for us, we don't have any structure. So whenever we do get money, it gets poured into a blob, because we don't have a place that's structured yet that we could build. We don't have a foundation yet, but yet we actually try to pretend and act like we do have a foundation when it's not ours. It's the other foundation called the American Dream Foundation. That's what we constantly keep trying to build our lives on. And then we want to create these all Black businesses and all Black markets and organizations that with areas of focus on AA and all this other stuff. Not to say that is bad. It's time to evolve that, though, now. Take it to the next level. Let's go somewhere and stop being in this space where we keep repeating the same stuff over and over. Let's take shows like this that bring issues to a stop and allow us to examine remedy. We might not agree. We probably won't, because we're all fed lies, right? Absolutely. So when we come to the table, once we get all the lies out, right, we done fought, we don't like each other for a little bit. Okay, that's cool. But we have to learn how to come back.
Absolutely.
And continue to be open for change.
Absolutely.
So I'll leave it at that.
Absolutely. We're at the end of our show. This has been an amazing discussion. Amazing. Julius, we miss you. But
we do.
We had a great time here. Gabby, you are, man, just rivers of knowledge. I mean, just so insightful. And I did not know you were an economist. Go. Badass, for real, Gabby. But Gabby, before we part, what do you want to leave with our audience. What share something about self-care, because you touched on it so eloquently about how a lot of our societal issues starts with the self, and systemic, I'm sorry, and systematic illness comes from not dealing with the inner issues of ourselves. So leave us some parting words on that.
Absolutely. I could just share from my personal journey that if you do not love yourself for real, and that means even doing the hard stuff, like when you want to think negative about a situation, don't think positive. Whenever them bills are piling up, don't think about the bills piling up. Think about that you already got them paid. Trust in the Most High and keep the faith, because you know, nobody said the road would be easy. Life ain't no crystal stair. But as long as you live like you have faith in something that's more powerful than you, as long as you don't listen to what the outside world has to say, when they say no, tell yourself yes. If
Absolutely.
you have a dream, follow that dream. Every day, do one little teeny tiny thing that gets you closer to your dream, not the American dream, not your mama's dream, not your children's dream, your dream. Put yourself first. Tell your husband, have a nice day right now. I got to have my day. Tell your wife, I got to have my day. Tell those children of yours, I love y'all, but I got to have my day. You make yourself priority always.
You know what? I want to end by saying Maria Roebuck said, break the cycle. She says, change has to happen with the struggle. Our show is called On Tilt for a reason. Because you know what? We're not going to deviate too far to the left. We're not going to deviate too far to the right. Being on tilt helps keep us humble. And so my encouragement to everyone is stay humbled. Take care of yourself, but stay humble. Because when we get out of that place of humbleness, we tend to be self-centered. And we forget about our brothers and sisters who are struggling right alongside of us. I thank you for checking back in, Gabby, because you are loved and you are appreciated. And even if you just send a thumbs up to say I'm okay, at the very least, you did more than enough. And we know you're okay. But you do have a right to have your own space to take care of you. It's important. We're at the end of our show, guys. I love y'all for real. Next week, Julius hopefully will be back with us. Keep us in your prayers. Keep this show in your prayers. I'll be praying for you all. Bye.
One side, only one, quarter there. But it's always so hard to come back to this space. But what's even harder is the fact when someone is silent and ignore your cries. I've been crying for almost 2 years now. And yet I still want to know what happened in that room, 16th floor, right here. Where were you standing?
One side are you on, my people? One side are you on?
We're here to celebrate, right? We said we're here to celebrate, right? I believe that. I believe that we. I believe that we will. I believe that we will. I believe that we will win. 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 I believe that we will win.